Going on today, we have Supreme Court decisions coming down. The Supreme Court has limited the ability of these district judges to stop the executive branch. In this case, it's President Trump, because we've seen 61 injunctions come their way. And then you transpose that a little bit further and you say one of the major decisions was, which I think one of the most impactful, is birthright citizenship. Most countries don't have it. I don't think anybody does, where if you're born here, you become a citizen. But if you're illegal, if you're the parents and you're an illegal immigrant and you have a kid, that kid's an American. Why is that okay? Ever? So the president says we're going to try to end that. Went right up to the Supreme Court. They tried to send an injunction, said you can't do it. Now they go back down because now we're saying there's too many injunctions. So let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
And unlike the current mayor, I'm not going to be working alongside the Trump administration to build the single largest deportation force in American history. I'm going to actually represent each and every New Yorker, and that includes immigrant New Yorkers.
He's a good speaker, but it's what he says is the problem. Tidal wave of panic as New York's primary for Democrats has the whole party wondering, radical socialist Zohran Mamdani, what does his win mean? Besides good news for AOC, the Uganda-born Nepo child with a radical Columbia professor dad who wants to be a socialist and really aspires to be a communist, wants to have free supermarkets, free buses, and charge rich people more. Does that make sense to you? Mayor Adams reignites his campaign with new momentum. Cuomo is staying in, and Curtis Lee, whose chances have never looked better.
Number 2.
Mr. Leader, what about this provision that's getting chopped out from the parliamentarian?
You guys right here.
Everything is challenging, but they're all speed bumps, and we have contingency plans, Plan B and Plan C.
Senator Thune, he's got in charge the parliamentary pranks. It looks like the left-leaning ref of reconciliation is throwing sand in the gears of the Republican budget cuts, forcing Senator Thune to scramble to finish the big, beautiful bill as Trump waits, ready to use his hammer or blow his top.
Number 1.
Well, I will say that this was an extraordinary effort by the American military, following on several extraordinary efforts by the Israelis. And we will eventually know precisely how much the Iranian program was damaged.
All right, there you go, Condoleezza Rice. She is encouraged because she knows what the Iran drama was all about. The strike worked. Details and divisions have emerged as on Capitol Hill over the Titanic Iran bunker buster blast. But one thing is clear. It was effective, despite what you might have read. But is the Middle East finally ready for a peaceful makeover? Iran has been the problem. I know not the only problem, but the financing of a lot of problems. Their goal, more than life itself, they wanted to end life for every Jewish person that they could, especially the state of Israel. So that's where we stand while waiting for the Supreme Court decisions to come down. But just to give you an idea of the potential, almost everybody listening to me right now, our whole adult lives has been one Middle East mess to the next. What is everyone's problem with Israel? The 67 war, the 48, there was a war in 48, 1 year after being born. 67 almost tore them apart. 73 cut the country in half. They win all these wars and take buffer zones back. And then there was an 80 in Lebanon. And finally, that horrific October 7th, 2 years ago. But the results have gone Israel's direction and took Prime Minister Netanyahu from vilified, I think, from an all-time high. I haven't seen the polls. But who can see the way he's conducted these conflicts and not be impressed? He's just got to figure out what's going to happen in Gaza. In terms of what's going to happen with Iran, that's going to be our thing as much as their thing. Here's Iran's foreign minister. Now, I don't know. We don't have the Ayatollah, do we? We don't have the Ayatollah, but maybe we can get him because translated, he says Donald Trump exaggerated the bombing damage on the nuclear power plants and they were victorious. Really? The Iranian foreign minister didn't get the memo. Cut 5.
I must say that the damage is excessive and serious. But for the inspectors to visit, that is a decision that must be made. And in my opinion, in accordance with the law of the parliament, the Supreme National Security Council should make this decision.
So, wow, not even saying the Grand Ayatollah, the National, whatever that is, that Security Council will make that decision. He's a foreign minister, their version of a Marco Rubio, their Secretary of State. Khomeini's pre-recorded speech that aired on Iranian state television, his first appearance since June 19th, they say was filled with warnings and threats directed towards the United States and Israel. You know, he's 86. He's known, we have to take their word for it, as a skilled orator, known for his forceful address to the country's more than 90 million people. However, in this appearance, he looked more tired than just a week ago. He had a hoarse voice and occasionally stumbled over his words, which is rare. Listen.
They attacked our nuclear facilities, a matter that is independently worth pursuing for prosecution in international courts, but they failed to do anything significant. The President of America greatly exaggerated what had happened. It became clear that he needed this exaggeration.
What do I say? Did you see the damage? Did you see the bunker busters? Did you see these are the most powerful bombs ever dropped, non-nuclear, in the history of the planet? He went on to say they could not achieve anything significant. Really? Nothing significant. Okay. He went on, it was a 10-minute video. No mention of their nuclear program and the status of their facilities and centrifuges. I'm not sure this guy's going to be in power too much longer. Which great is Bruce Pearl, who's going to be on with me on One Nation, coach of Auburn basketball. Khomeini put this on X. My congratulations on our dear Iran's victory over the U.S. regime. The U.S. regime entered the war directly because it felt that if it didn't, the Zionist regime would be completely destroyed. It entered the war in an effort to save the regime, but achieved nothing. I don't know what planet he's on. I know you got to spin things, but at least make an effort to be somewhat glued in reality and give your people a little bit more credit. So Bruce Pearl took on Khomeini and said, liars and terrorists will not be trusted. I pray you keep the ceasefire so people in the Middle East can go living and build on President Trump's Abraham Accords. But don't think for 1 second you're fooling anyone. The world knows you still want a nuclear bomb and is watching. Yep. They also deepened their alliance with China, Iran's defense minister making his first foreign trip since the recent 12-day clash. He's headed over to China. I don't know if it was predetermined because his visit to Russia prior to the bombing, they said was already scheduled. You don't have to say that if it's not true. So I think that China already showed that their support of Iran is extremely limited. What they want to do is buy their cheap oil. 90% of their oil sales go to China, and they're more than happy to buy cheap oil from Russia and cheap oil from Iran. But when it comes to weapons, when it comes to missile defense, there was nothing there. Nothing there at all. So that's interesting. Darrell Kimball is a nuclear expert, arms control associate. He spoke with Jennifer Griffin about the highly enriched uranium and how people are worried about the 400 kilograms that is out and about. But if you're going to go into talks with them, the first thing we got to demand, where's the enriched uranium for?
From a scientific perspective, how would you move the 60% highly enriched uranium? Like what kind of containers or what? How sensitive is that?
So in gas form, these things can fit inside cylinders that might look like a water heater, right, in a house or scuba tank. So, they're highly movable. It doesn't require that many vehicles to move it. There's no radiation that's leaking that requires special protection. There has to be protection. Basic protection. So it is not that difficult to move. It is very difficult to power down, package up the centrifuge machines, however. So it is unlikely that, Iran was able to salvage workable centrifuge machines before these strikes from Natanz and Fordow.
What a shame. So, find the uranium, and this should be rounded up. But the major problem with them as a major nuclear power for now is over. When we come back, I'll take some of your calls, 1-866-408-7669. Tomi Lahren will join us for a few minutes, and then we'll bring in Jim Trusty to unwind some of the decisions that are coming down from the Supreme Court. Exciting day. So glad you're here. And don't forget, One Nation, Sunday, 10 p.m. Amongst my guests, Hugh Hewitt, Larry Kudlow will be with us, Bruce Pearl will be here, Tomi Lahren, and Sid Rosenberg will all be on the show Sunday at 10 on Fox News Channel. So Bill Melugin's here. He's got a few minutes before he has to go back to Los Angeles and try to lower everybody's taxes and get men out of women's sports. Could you do both those things, Bill?
I'll see if I can make it happen overnight.
Right.
Yeah, I'll talk to Gavin.
Fresh off Hankering Everyone's show, as well as firming on a panel. So, Bill, we've got we have three Supreme Court decisions coming down. That's big news. We got the president trying to get the big, beautiful bill. That's big news. But he has great news that he has not really, in my view, taken total advantage of. And that's the whole shutdown of the border.
Yeah.
You were just sharing some numbers with me on how dramatic the change has been over the last 4 months.
It's remarkable, and I think his biggest campaign promise that he's delivered on, and fast, right? So under the worst year of the Biden administration at the border, 2023, there were an average every day of 1,800 gotaways slipping into the country.
We see them on video. We don't stop.
Yep. They're seen on video. They're seen on sensors. They see footprints in the sand, but agents are so overwhelmed they just can't get them. So remember that number, 1,800 a day in 2023. June this month, that number is now 38 per day.
The whole
entirety of the nearly 2,000-mile long southern border, 38 per day. Brian, you can't fill up a school bus with that number. That is a 98% drop from the highs of 2023. None, basically. The Border Patrol chief, we just had him on this morning, Mike Banks, he told me since January 20th, since Inauguration Day, 14 illegal immigrants have been released into the U.S., and those are only for medical reasons or like public interest reasons, like they want somebody to testify in a trial or something like that. 14 in 5 months.
And how do you think they've done it? What's the main thing that they've done? What role has the military played?
Military and consequences. That remember, as soon as the Biden administration came in, what did they run on? They were smiling every time they said, we got rid of every Trump border policy. We're going to stop building the wall. We're going to put a 100-day moratorium on deportations. We're going to limit who ICE can arrest. Mayorkas himself said just being in the U.S. illegally doesn't mean you should be deported. So it became a very friendly environment to migrants. And migrants talk, right? They see it on social media. When people start coming across the border and they're getting in and they're waving, sometimes to our cameras, it's easy. And then they're getting 5-star hotels with you guys here in New York City and free bus rides. So what happened immediately upon Trump taking office? He ended all that. Catch and release is over. He brought the military down. Catch and release is over. So now when people walk across that river and they step foot on U.S. soil, instead of being released into the U.S. with the court date 7 years away, they're immediately going into CBP detention. If they can't be immediately sent back to Mexico and they're from somewhere else, they're going into ICE detention, and ICE is sending them out, and they might be sent to CCOT. They might be sent they're seeing these images of guys with their heads being shoved down, shackled behind their back, being sent to El Salvador. Now we have a flight trying to go to Sudan. Do you think if you're a young military-age man wanting to cross the border right now, now's a good time to try that?
Not in a million years.
Not right now.
It's amazing how it ripples down, doesn't it?
And the biggest thing is the word of mouth and how quickly that has changed. Trump is seen by the migrants as being mean when it comes to the border and immigration. You know what? From their perspective, maybe he is, but it's working.
What about the cartels?
They still have to make money somehow. They're still trying to get their drugs and their people in, but they got to be taking a huge hit, Brian, because the amount of fentanyl being seized has dropped like 50% already. The amount of people coming across the border it's completely fallen off a cliff. In December of 2023, we had 300,000 people come into the country in one single month. Last month we had, I think, 8,000. I mean, I knew that it was going to drop if Trump won. I never thought it was going to go this low. No way would I think that 38 gotaways along 2,000 miles is possible. Think about that. From Tijuana to Brownsville, Texas, 38 people slip across.
So what is that doing for the border communities? I mean,
I'll tell you, they love not having dudes in camouflage running through their front yards every night. They love not having CBP helicopters flying above their homes every day, looking for people hiding in their backyards, trying to get away from Border Patrol. And that was happening every day, every hour at times. I can't tell you how many times I'd be down in McAllen or Roma or Eagle Pass, these communities right on the river, where these gotaways would slip across the river. Border Patrol's too busy processing a group of 500 to 1,000, waiting to put them on a bus. There's no agents to catch these guys, and they just go running through people's homes. You'd find them lying under people's cars. Sometimes they'd break into ranch houses. They'd take people's food. I mean, that's all done. And you wonder how, look at what happened in the election, right? All southern Texas used to be blue. It all flipped red. It all flipped red because Trump was promising mass deportations and a secure border. That's a Democrat area, and those Democrats wanted border security.
Henry Cuellar is about the only guy, right? Congressman Cuellar seems to be sincere. He's also pro-life, but they always try to primary him on the left. Do we need the wall?
We do. It's a force multiplier. It's not realistic to think we're going to have a wall from every inch of the border from San Diego to Brownsville, but you need it in certain areas because it funnels people and it's a force multiplier. So there are areas where you can use mountains, you can use bodies of water as natural defenses, but in these wide open areas where people can come across, you do need a wall because if there's a wall there, then they're going to have to try to go around elsewhere. Right. You create choke points and that wall is it's essentially a big long border patrol agent there.
Are we ready to go? Any of the other stuff usable that's been rusting for years?
A lot of that has been sold off. So there's still some of it left that's been rusting, but remember, they sold a lot of this stuff off for like pennies of the dollar. They did not want that wall. Now, I'm sure they're going to source it in other ways and they're going to get that material and they're going to find a way to do it. But I mean, U.S. taxpayers spent hundreds of millions of dollars on that wall. It was bought and paid for. And with the stroke of a pen, the Biden administration said, nope, we're done with it. It's not happening. They let it rust out for years, and a lot of it got sold off to different contractors.
I'm sure you've seen them, and you covered the riots in Los Angeles.
Yep.
People want to say Trump made too much of it. It was just a few blocks. What's the reality, Bill?
It was in significant chunks of downtown LA. I covered the LA riots in 2020, the George Floyd riots. I think it was right to bring in the National Guard because they waited too long in 2020. And by that point, Santa Monica burned down, Long Beach burned down. Santa Monica still has never recovered. Beverly Hills was getting hit, Rodeo Drive. They didn't nip it in the bud quickly. So did he call them in pretty early this time? Sure, yeah, but look what was happening. Border Patrol agents were having rocks thrown at them. There were concrete blocks being thrown through Border Patrol van windows.
And ice, right?
Ice as well. Agents were being attacked. And he has a responsibility as the commander-in-chief to protect his federal, his ICE officers, his CBP officers, the federal buildings, which were being attacked. They were literally being laid siege to. And so, yeah, he sent them in, and notice everything calmed down after that.
Are they still there?
They're still there.
So I imagine that they're going to be pulled out soon. I don't know if they're going to make a big deal of it, but the courts upheld that he has a right to do that.
They upheld he had a right to do it.
Don't you think, Bill, that's a great message to Seattle and Portland and these other cities, Chicago, that if you don't control your streets, that the federal government can and will?
And I interviewed J.D. Vance in L.A. last Friday. He was out visiting some of the Marines and soldiers. That's exactly what he said, is other cities should take note of this, that exactly what you just said. If the locals aren't willing to take care of their own streets, we're going to do it for them.
Yeah, and which is amazing. You would think they'd want to. Bill, you've been on the air so much, but when's the next time we could see you?
I'll be in New York again, I believe, mid-August.
So mid-August, so it's in person, but we'll see you all over the channel.
I'm on air all the time. Yeah, I don't know where I'll be. They got me moving around all over the place.
He's doing an incredible job. Bill Melugin.
Right. Birthright citizenship, in terms of the merits, will have to wait until a later decision that's going back down. The issue here is whether the court was correct in issuing a universal or national injunction. The court here says that the government's likely to prevail on that issue. It fails to see where these district courts get this authority at all. And that led to a really uncommon exchange between Justice Barrett and Justice Jackson. In Justice Jackson's opinion, she goes into rather hyperbolic language that this is going to result in our collective demise and basically the fall of our institutions. Justice Barrett would have none of that and went after that dissent and basically suggested that the danger to democracy is judicial supremacy and really sort of castigates Jackson for that language.
So that is the big news when it comes to the injunctions. And there's been 61 on the president already. There was 20 for Biden, 4 for Obama. And this president's only 4 months in. The Supreme Court has said, yeah, way too many injunctions. That the district court is overstepping their bounds and doing this, whether the lawsuits brought up to them, how they're going to adhere to it. They're re-examining all the injunctions right now. And Jonathan Turley just broke it down. So Tomi Lahren's here. She's going to be on with us on One Nation this weekend. Host of OutKick. Tomi Lahren is fearless, her show. Tomi, we're not lawyers to break it down, but I will say this. Trump's going to have a press conference. He is quite happy because the injunctions were driving him crazy.
And from my understanding, which is limited because I'm not a lawyer, right? From my understanding, this doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but it expedites what should be the president's agenda. So that's why it's such a huge victory. I think those of us who are waiting for a ruling on birthright citizenship, we're really excited for that. And we probably should have known we weren't really going to get that part of it. This was just the more overarching issue. But I hope we get birthright citizenship a ruling at some point too, because people were very excited about that one, myself included.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what they also said. While the court has limited the use of nationwide injunctions in general, how this could apply to the birthright citizenship executive order is unclear. The justices order the lower courts to expeditiously decide how the ruling would apply to the particular plaintiffs, because let's say it's the ACLU. Enforcement of the executive order is stayed from taking effect for 30 days. So it goes down to reevaluate.
Yeah.
But we all know it's being abused. We all know that it was for slaves in the 13th Amendment. We all know it was because some racist segregationists said, I don't think my slaves should be citizens just because we lost the war. So they made an amendment, and that has nothing to do with Guatemalans coming over here illegally where they can have 4 kids and call them Americans, and they get to stay.
And they also get to take advantage of services and their family members as well. So
China
that's where
is
you
the
get
biggest abuser.
Right. And you get a lot of people who were living off of entitlement programs through their American-born anchor babies, which is a big problem. Going back to the actual opinion, though, I think the biggest news out of here, and I don't mean to be dramatic, but I think it's like the catfight between Coney Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson, KBJ. The words exchanged through the opinion and the dissent there, those were fighting words. Like, that was a little nasty.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be doing the show. I did not read it. I did not see that they were going back directly on each other.
Oh, boy.
Through the dissent.
Yes. Pretty spicy. It was spicy. And this stuff isn't normally spicy. But for me, I was like, okay, this is some Bravo in here, some reality TV, some Real Housewives of the Supreme Court. But essentially, what was said by Justice Barrett was, you're saying that the executive is not supreme, but you want the judicial to be supreme. That doesn't work either. And this whole KBJ of it's a constitutional crisis, as Jonathan Turley was pointing out, this exaggerated, well, the court, made such a mistake and this is a threat to democracy. In essence, is what she was saying. It's much the same drumbeat that the left has been giving us for the last at least 2 years. And I think it makes her look ridiculous and silly. And I'm glad that Justice Barrett really slapped her down on that.
And because President Trump called her out, he's disappointed behind closed doors with some of her decisions. And now she not only made the decision, she wrote the opinion. So I think that's important. So let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. It's not written yet. It's not done. And this parliamentarian who decides if this really falls under reconciliation for layman means essentially what Senator Byrd made a rule. You don't need 60 votes when you use reconciliation, but it's got to be involved with the budget. It's got to be a fiscal issue. The parliamentarian comes out and says, when it comes to limiting Medicare and Medicaid to illegal immigrants, that shouldn't be in the bill. What are you talking about? Of course it should be in the bill. So they've stopped about a dozen different measures that the Senate's put in there, and it's making them really scramble. And it's making people like Senator Tommy Tuberville say maybe we should just fire this Harry Reid appointed parliamentarian.
Yeah. And again, the left is going to spin this because they love it. They love to make everything look like a constitutional crisis and an authoritarian regime. That's how they'll spin that.
Right. Elizabeth McDonough is her name.
It is utterly ridiculous. I'd also say the Democrats are running away with this whole, we're having cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, and Granny's going to get tossed off, and the people that really need it are going to get tossed off, and they're going to be in a death spiral of despair. But they refuse to acknowledge the waste, fraud, and abuse that exists within those systems. It's actually robbing people who deserve it from actually getting the benefits that they're going to need and future generations that are going to need it. So to me, that's been the most frustrating part. And I don't think Republicans have done a good enough job of clearly pushing back against that.
Do you think that the fact that it has not been in the news much has helped or hurt Republicans?
Helped. But I think that everyday Americans, when you start talking about the big, beautiful bill and reconciliation, they don't really know what that means, nor do they care. They want to know if they're going to have no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. They want to know if their tax cuts are going to be extended. There are some people that are very concerned about the whole SALT aspect of all of this. And also the Medicaid and Medicare, they're concerned about it. I think they want to see when it's actually in front of them, because right now it feels all very abstract.
I think you're right. I think that they must be happy. They just want the economy that they had with Trump. Now they say, why are prices not coming down? Well, they're not going up. Inflation has basically stopped. Number two, gas prices are down to 2021 levels and probably going to keep going in that direction to the point where we might be able to start replenishing our gas and oil reserve, which is fantastic. So I think that'll be a positive when we actually get to do some of these pipelines and start implementing the offshore drilling and get the natural gas over to our best customers, who are called our allies, who the auto pen decided to cut off from during the Joe Biden years. They cut off our allies. But Chip Roy is upset with the Senate side. Listen to him about what he's seeing. Cut 28.
At a minimum, we have $46 billion of additional, I think, scored dollars that would be on paper for the Green New Scam subsidies they don't want to repeal in the Senate. But in truth, we think that number is closer to $200 billion. Our friend Alex Epstein, who's an expert on this, if you look at the open-ended nature of these deals, it will allow these subsidies to go in perpetuity and would be disaster. But it's not just that. Like, we made all those improvements on food stamps. Guess what? The Senate is just undoing about $100 billion worth of those food stamps. And that's not the parliamentarian fully. That's choices that they're making.
They're also, the new Green Deal, they're not unwinding it to a big level. You know why, Tommy? Because there's these plants, the battery plants, the electric car, they're being built in their states. So if you're Tom Tillis and Ford's building the Ford Lightning in your backyard, and you go, well, we're cutting that off. They go, okay, I'm probably going to lose my Senate seat. That's what they're saying.
Well, my state of Tennessee made a big investment in that as well with the EV batteries facilities for Ford. I think that's going to be a flop. I think at the end of the day, everybody wants things for their state, but people are not buying electric cars and they don't want them. The demand is not there to really legitimize and validate a lot of these subsidies.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't talk about this because it's very in the weeds, but the carbon capture pipeline stuff and the credits that go to that's still, to my knowledge, left in to this big, beautiful bill.
Why would we do that?
Well, because companies like it, because they can get these credits, they can get these subsidies for this carbon capture. They can say that they're helping the environment. They send their carbon capture to some underground whatever. It's not even really proven to be an environmental savior. But again, these subsidies are very attractive for companies and corporations, and it's really unfortunate. A lot of it is stripped away, but not enough.
So you have a lot to do. You have to do Outnumbered.
Yeah.
And you're going to play yourself on that show, right?
I am.
You are. So that's going to be 12 o'clock on Fox. But then what are you doing Sunday at 10 o'clock?
Well, I'm going to be back with you, of course.
Well, on One Nation.
On One Nation.
And you're going to play yourself on that show, too.
I absolutely will.
Wow. I can't wait to talk to you. We're going to be doing a media segment where we evaluate how well the media is doing. They had a very bad day, I think, on Monday.
There's some doozies
this
week that I'm very excited to get into.
Right. And I'm glad you made the language palatable for our audience, doozies. Tomi Lahren, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
At a minimum, we have $46 billion of additional, I think, scored dollars that would be on paper for the Green New Scam subsidies they don't want to repeal in the Senate. But in truth, we think that number is closer to $200 billion. Our friend Alex Epstein, who's an expert on this, if you look at the open-ended nature of these deals, it will allow these subsidies to go in perpetuity and would be disaster. But it's not just that. Like, we made all those improvements on food stamps. Guess what? The Senate is just undoing about $100 billion worth of those food stamps. And that's not the parliamentarian fully. That's choices that they're making.
And that's frustrated House members, conservative House members, who had a hard time with one vote margin handing the bill over to the Senate. But Chip Roy's frustrated. Is Rick Scott? Let's ask him. The senator from Florida joins us now. Senator, you heard what Chip Roy said. Did he have a correct characterization of where this bill's at?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, we don't have text. You know, Brian, we still don't have text. So we'll see what this is. But we have got to understand that, let's do the right things for the American public. We're running $2 trillion a year deficits. We have $37 trillion worth of debt. We had a 53% increase in spending in 5 years. And even the House bill cut it less than 2%. So we've got a lot of work to do. But one thing I'm really focused on is Medicaid. Brian, Medicaid is for poor kids. Medicaid is for disabled kids, disabled Americans, people with chronic illness. But guess where all the money's going? The able-bodied adults that don't want to work. There's a Wall Street Journal article today that said that these able-bodied adults that don't want to work, that we're giving them free health care.
Whoa. Aren't you doing work requirements? Don't both sides agree on that? Both chambers agree there's going to be a work requirement?
Brian, no, they can volunteer.
That's it?
They can just volunteer. You don't have to work. Come on, Brian. Work?
Well, I thought that was already agreed upon.
My mom would be so mad at me if I didn't have a job. Get back to work and spend the money to help these poor kids rather than these able-bodied adults who want to spend their time watching television.
The reimbursement level's at 90% from the government thanks to Obamacare. But what about the green subsidies? People like Tom Tillis. Well, by the way, when it comes to Medicaid, you got Josh Hawley saying, don't touch Medicaid. That's what my people depend on.
I agree. We've got to spend money where Medicaid was intended. Poor kids. Brian, when my little brother, before Medicaid, had a bone disease, and my parents had no money, they couldn't find anybody to take care of him. He finally went to a Shriners Hospital 4 hours away. That poor kid might not get care today because guess what? They're spending all the money on able-bodied adults who don't want to work, and guess where all the money is going? They're going to California and New York so they can give free health care to illegals. New York gets $20 billion more out of the Medicaid program out of the federal government than Florida. Well, we have 4 million more people.
So the parliamentarian is not helpful.
No,
you try to reform food stamps. It says you tried to stop undocumented illegal immigrants from getting Medicaid. She says that doesn't fall into reconciliation, the Byrd rules. The parliamentarian also ruled out an Obamacare payment change for plans that cover abortion. She also tuned out and crossed out when you guys wanted to stop using federal funds for gender transition. So what's going on here?
It's really disappointing. It's really disappointing that the parliamentarian gets to make these choices. But guess what? Guess what we could do? Don't allow the states to game the system. They're gaming the system to take federal tax dollars. So Florida taxpayers, which don't pay for this stuff, are paying for it in New York and California and other states. So stop allowing them to do it. It's not, we can fix all these things, right, by stopping this, but it's just a scam. Provider taxes it's just a scam. Look, I get that, my friends in the hospital business, they want to make more money. I get it. I was in that business. But they're making so much money right now. Take care of the hospitals that are struggling, the rural hospital. That's who we ought to be taking care of. Poor kids.
But there is a fund.
Kids,
but Senator Scott, there is a fund. There is a fund for that they're talking about setting aside for rural hospitals, correct?
Absolutely. So that's why I said let's take some money. Let's direct it to CMS so Mehmet Oz can direct it so he can look at the financial statements and say, where do which hospitals need help? So some of our rural hospitals are going to need help.
All right?
And so let's help them. That's exactly what
Are you in on these talks, Senator? Are you in on this, or are you just waiting for them to give you something?
We have conversations, but you don't know until they give you a final bill. And so, look, do I want to support a bill? Yeah, but could I support a bill that doesn't take care of poor kids, rural hospitals, doesn't take care of disabled kids or people with chronic illness? No. Can I support a bill that doesn't do anything about our $37 trillion worth of debt? I can't. Do I want to vote for a bill? You better believe it. But I want to vote for a good bill.
But how do you feel? How do you feel about entitlements being something you visit after this is passed?
What will be the pressure? There'll be any pressure. There will be no pressure after this. What would be the pressure to fix any of it? And if we can fix it now, this is our chance.
Well, Social Security's under pressure. It's going to go bankrupt shortly, right? By 2030. So that would be pressure.
But if you want to fix Social Security, if you want to fix Medicare, get people back to work. We have 50 million people in this country, able-bodied. I don't know if they're all able-bodied, but 50 million people working age, so they're not working. Now, if you're disabled, I get it. If you've got young children, I get it. But guess what? Like I'm talking about with Medicaid, you just want to spend your time watching television? Get to work. help build up our country again, help pay for the Medicare program and pay for Social Security program. Well, if we get people back to work, we can fix it.
So Senator Thune says, I got Plan B and Plan C. The president wants to get it done by July 4th. You don't want to let the president down. So how does this play out? We only have 30 seconds left.
So how it plays out is, we're all going to see a bill finally when it comes out sometime. I don't know if it'll be today or tomorrow. And we're all, the ones that, want to focus on these issues, we're going to work hard to make changes. Look, I can't support something that doesn't take care of poor kids, rural hospitals. I mean, it's real simple to me. Brian, why aren't we doing that?
I don't know, Senator Rick Scott. That's you got the front row seat. We're waiting to see what is released out the window. Senator Rick Scott, thank you very much.